Hi, and welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here. For those of you new, my name is Chris. Before we get into today's video, this video is going to be very different from many that I've done in the past. This is going to be a recording from yesterday where I gave my first official presentation of what Logical A is, small consulting business that I'm starting. This was met with some very early challenges even before the recording began. First, we ended up in a different meeting place from where we normally meet, and that place unfortunately did not have accessibility for microphone setup. So everything that you're going to hear is being captured by the mic on my phone, so you'll probably have to turn the volume up. Unfortunately, it's not all captured on my phone, as at the start of the Q&A after the presentation, my audio for some reason, or my microphone stopped picking up any sound whatsoever. So I had to wait for a copy of the video from another angle from another phone and then trim down just to the Q&A. So I hope any of that made sense. There were a myriad of other technical difficulties that happened before we started. And as terrified as I was already going into this, I did manage to get past all of those and actually give the presentation. Afterwards, the feedback was very good. It was very well received. People enjoyed getting the information. So without further ado, I expect, or I actually don't expect, but I welcome the any comments that happen that you might have regarding the information in the video. During my part, you will be able to see the slides much better than you would have from the other angle, as that phone was much further away. So I hope with all luck that I will have this adjusted enough on my end so that you don't have to turn it up too awfully loud, but still I kind of suspect you will. I hope you are able to hear both the questions and my answers, and that you're able to really understand the presentation as a whole also. So without further ado, here we go. Before I let you go though, one more thing. I had a big day yesterday besides the presentation, so I'm a little scattered today. Next week will be different during Startup Week, where I will be mic'd up. I am still going to record that session as well as the Q&A. However, that won't come out till probably the 20th, as Startup Week is going to be epically huge, and I'm probably going to need a couple of days of real downtime after spending a week doing so much with Startup Week. So for real, without further ado, here are the video clips from Wednesday at 1 Million Cups.
Speaker this morning, please welcome your friend and mine, Chris Weekly, to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. I am very grateful to be here this morning, and I'm also terrified. So I brought a cheat sheet because the data points in here are too big in scope to go through in just 6 minutes. I'm going to move over here. Hope I'm not in anyone's way. So my name is Chris Weekly. I'm a late diagnosed autistic person who's diagnosed in their 30s, and I'm the founder of Logical A. Now, before I get into the purpose of Logical A, I want to briefly take you through the current definition of autism. So autism is now referred to as ASD, or autism spectrum disorder. Now, as of last year's studies, about 1 in 34 children will be diagnosed autistic in their lifetime. With the autism, the variety of symptoms is very vast, which is why it's called spectrum, and the level of severity is going to differ between autistics. So when you meet an autistic person, you've met exactly one autistic person. The reason behind Logical A is in the data points here. And these data points are incredibly crushing for people like me, with 80% or higher, depending on the study you read, being under or unemployed. And the vast majority, as of 2022, of businesses surveyed simply believing that it is cost prohibitive to hire people like me. So I want to quickly introduce you to just a few of the issues that we deal with day in, day out. When it comes to sensory issues, this can be something that is applicable to just one of the 5 senses, or excuse me, one of the 8 senses, and the other 3 senses that maybe you're not familiar with are for another talk entirely. But this can impact everything from touch, how fabrics feel, being in physical contact with people, too much light, too much sound, smells from break rooms or kitchens can have a very big impact. There are also times where you'll find autistics who simply just can't make eye contact, or you'll find that they are, with the term flat face, very expressionless and maybe come across as not having emotion. On the flip side of this are some very unique skills and talents that we can bring to a business. For instance, 44% of people on the spectrum have an above average IQ. When we are placed in a job that we are good at, in a modified environment that allows us to excel, we are 40% or greater in the level of productivity and efficiency that we can bring. Our ability to hyper-focus on a task is something that I find very special with my community. We can appear to just take on something and go in an appearance of being effortless in our ability to work on that task in an amazing way. We are also very honest and loyal around people that we know. And I have plenty of life experience where this works for me, but there are times that it does work against us. So where does Logical A come into play here? The goal with Logical A is to go into companies and teach them not just how to find and message to autistics that they are welcome there, but also how to reach out, first contacts for pre-interviews, interviews, through the hiring process, and then taking it a step further to go through your facility with you and help you map out the areas down to the department where you can modify optimally to place autistic workers in those areas. I'll also teach you how to understand the different types of stemming, the different issues and variations as it comes to sensory issues as well. All of this does not begin to happen until it is okay for autistics to disclose. This is probably the single biggest barrier to employment for autistic people. Being able to disclose that you're autistic to an employer during the initial meeting, whether it's an email, cover letter, what have you, phone call, is going to start to begin to bridge the very large gap that exists between autistics and employers. This is also going to begin to really help them become more in sync with the production environment that they're going to be in and work with those around them. And lastly, and this is vital, that this will give autistic people a chance at the level of independence that everyone else has. So my final slide is all my contact information. If you have questions, feel free to reach out on my social media, call me, email me. And lastly, I want to thank you so very much for allowing me to speak today and give this information to you. Thank you.
And now the floor is open for questions.
Just raise your hand, so crowd control. And feel free to call on whoever you want, Chris. Go ahead. No mic today.
No mic today, guys. Sorry.
Great presentation. I learned a lot, and I love the screen on access on folks on the autism spectrum brain. What is stimming?
Yeah.
and how does that play out in a social or professional?
So stimming is a level of self-regulation that many autistics do. However, I'll let you in on something that maybe most people don't think about, is that everybody stims to a certain level. If you've ever had a pen or a pencil in your hand and you tapped it on the paper, you tapped it against your temple, if you tend to rock in a chair wherever you're at, or if it swivels, if you move back and forth, those are types of stimming. And again, this is all about physically regulating our system. Now there are many other types of stims, hand clapping. I stand in the back at our regular meeting area, and I have a tendency to hit my fingers and mess with my fingers. A funny thing with another stim of mine is when I'm sitting or driving, my left leg it just moves and moves and moves. And when my wife and I were first dating, there were many times when she'd say, "Do we need to stop for a restroom?" And I said, "No, I'm fine." She goes, "Why do you not look fine?" And so that was one of those things that she had to understand. Yes?
This will be a feedback question.
Okay.
I work with Bike Walk Wichita on the advocacy side, and particularly with making streets safer for people that aren't driving. So coming from an autistic perspective, is there anything in particular that you would say I need to know when I'm talking to public officials, civil engineers, about these streets, that this is a particular barrier, or this is a particular challenge for you when you're out there walking or biking out on the streets, or transit?
With some autistics, going out in public is something that they need assistance with, because our understanding of what is dangerous and what isn't, a lot of times isn't there. The number of autistics who drown every year is an absolutely unbelievable number, and that is because there are times where the whole fear and fight or flight just don't come into play in our minds. The bigger thing about being outdoors, for me personally, are new places and new people. Those things are just, they can be mental crushers. If I am out too long, then I have to find some place that is quiet and is devoid of people, so I can try to reset myself. If I can't reset myself and I've been out too long, I just melt down. I can't talk. I don't want to talk. I don't want to communicate. I just want to close my eyes and just make everything go away. So the social aspect of going out and doing things with people is something that is very misunderstood to a very large degree. And I have heard various talks where people are like, including my own wife when I was first diagnosed, like, well, we just need to find somebody who can help you be more in the world. And I'm like, that's not possible. I can try to manage things, but my ability to really truly get there, it just isn't going to happen. I mean, I'm a person like everyone else. It's just I'm one of those people that have a different operating system, and finding bridges between your operating system and mine are the things that I think will help help everybody move forward with autism.
One quick follow-up on that, to make sure I'm not projecting, is you mentioned the noise there. So is noise pollution in particular a challenge that I need to be aware of?
Noise pollution for many autistics is something that we have to deal with. If things are too loud, I have noise canceling headphones, and then I also have some smaller, they're like earbuds that are not attached to anything that I can put in my ears to really dampen things. However, for me, it is also not just the noise and the light, but too much proximity to people, being too close. It just starts to weigh on me. And for some people, first interactions, and I'm way better than I was, where I was more very straightforward and blunt, and people just found that very unappealing, and it made me very unapproachable to most people. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yes?
My oldest and my youngest sons definitely have some of those attributes, like pacing. They never sit still, they're always moving. My oldest was tested as gifted, that was really not diagnosed at a certain level. He has now moved past some of his social and being blunt and typing. He has actually started substitute teaching, so he has got out there. But he's the one that does want to step aside, get away from the noise and the light at times, or he goes for a walk. My youngest is he wants to go for a walk. One of his quirks is learning to tell a joke and find those quips. So that's the way he socializes, by making things a joke. But they both are doing well. And yeah, it's like where to go with that, and are there skills that is there a place that people go to get those skills?
I wish I had more information on places to get those skills, because back in the early 2000s or the mid 2000s when I was diagnosed, there weren't any real services like that. You're just, and many people today are still left, well, what do I do now? And I think what's missed in the medical community is that when a child is diagnosed and there are services available, they can begin to start from that first building block to help them begin to manage life around them and manage themselves. And adults who are late diagnosed have those same starting blocks, and it's just very underrealized. Now, when it comes to humor, I'm glad you brought that up, because humor is kind of my primary go-to. And so my wife has a terrible time shopping with me. In fact, we have gotten to the point where I can successfully do the shopping within reason. I ask for a list, and then I come home with only the list. And I'll get questions like, well, do you see anything of interest? Wasn't on the list. And so we have learned that if she really wants something, that it has to go on the list. Unless the stores change. If the stores change everything, that is always a constant nightmare for me, because I use energy accounting, and I leave so much energy in a day when I know I need to go do the shopping. And it digs into that reserve energy I try to have left over at the end of the day, because they've changed everything, and now I have to hunt for everything that's on the list, like I walked into a brand new place. And that is awful.
Amen.
Yes?
I have, one of my children is on the spectrum, is a teenager, and I always am challenged thinking about what's he going to do when he grows up for a job. So I see your presentation, which was great. It sounds like you're helping businesses learn how to work with an autistic community. Is the component of your business helping match people on the spectrum with a job that you've worked with?
One of the roadmap items that I probably didn't bring up, which is why I'm glad you asked your question, is as I go through this process with companies, and this is the first presentation I have given on Logical A. And so you guys are really the first to hear and be exposed to kind of the kickoff of what I intend to do. But going back to your question, as I go in and I help companies understand and learn the various aspects of the autistic spectrum and how to begin to plan forward, I want this to start to bleed over with not just companies, but also employment agencies, where we can map out and start to expand the talent pool to be inclusive to autistic people. Because right now it is so automated out there that there is no place really to give these indicators so that even your job matching sites understand this. Now, I've seen a few sites where they say, do you have a disability? But again, when they ask about the disability, disclosure, again, is an epic barrier to employment, which simply needs to be addressed before any of this can really be truly effective. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you.
Yes?
So what really impresses me is you talk, I'm sure many of us here could relate to some of the scenarios you're explaining, because we are all on a spectrum somewhere. And I think that's what's really great about what you're doing, is that you're bringing in that whole new level of diversity and remembering that each individual is different and we all need different things to work better. So I can't thank you enough for bringing light to this for all of us, honestly.
Thank you so much. So I adopted a philosophy many years ago when I began to really dig in and understand more of myself. And that is that I'm a one. And so I began to expand that to a point where I see ones everywhere. And I say that because there's only ever going to be one of you. And since there's only ever going to be one of you, everyone in the world has something that no one else absolutely has. And the world is confusing for me with the level of social media and how quickly people are basically, I see them being treated, everyone treating people like a trend and not really understanding the depth or the whole of the person. And I think at that, with this point where we move way too fast past each other, I think of the world we live in as a one big universe. And I treat everyone like a little planet. And when I get close to those planets, I try to have a level of curiosity and discovery, because they may have something, information or a story or just something that I don't have that I very much like to have and keep. Yes?
What can we as small business owners do to be more accommodating to people who may or may not be, on the spectrum? Because, customers, or a lot of times if we're hiring employees, they won't disclose, but how can we just be overall accommodating and aware?
Well, I would like to see an epic shift, even if it takes a campaign to go in and meet with companies and help them understand what it means when an autistic person discloses. Because this means that they are going to be bringing their authentic self forward. Masking, day in and day out, is the most debilitating thing an autistic person can do. When we mask ourselves, we bury who we authentically are, trying to be a clone of people we're not. And this is physically and mentally exhausting. So to answer your question, businesses, no matter what size, could really stand to begin to educate or be educated about not just disclosing, but understanding the varying degrees of autism and really getting back to the individual relationship that we used to create when we went to go and work for someone. There's timeless lesson there that I think has been long forgotten and should be rediscovered. And the bigger point on that going forward is that by 2025, there will be over 500,000 young people who will become adults who are on the spectrum, and they are going to need access to the workforce. And if there is still an existing barrier there of just telling people who they are as a person, and that they are autistic, or they're on the spectrum, or however they want to phrase it. If they can't do that, that means they have to hide themselves. That means they're not bringing themselves to the workforce. They're bringing someone they're not. Oh, yes?
To all of us that are regulars that come here, if you think back to the first time that Chris came, it took a lot for him to get out of his comfort zone. 2 weeks ago, when we needed somebody to fill in the microphone to introduce the speakers, Chris stepped forward. It took him out of his comfort zone. For him to get up there and speak, it took him out of his comfort zone. So his comfort zone has gotten a lot wider, or a lot less, because he's stepping forward, he's learned to do it, and he's able to help all of us. And I've worked with some other people that have autism and other things, MS, and I don't remember what all, but we can appreciate it because we can step forward and tell those employers that these people can do the job. Once they learn, and I'll guarantee you, once that Chris learns how to do that job, you'll never have to look back because it's going to be done right the first time. How many of us have had employees that have not done that ability to do it right the first or even the second time? Teach them how to do it once and you don't have to look back. Okay? But we can all give Chris a hand for how.
So I want to add in something real quick on that. When it comes to autism and its varying degrees, there's the term that really goes around a lot, high-functioning autism. And immediately people have seen television and movies and they think super genius or math nerd or something like that. And really all high-functioning autism means is that we can do many more things with little or no assistance as opposed to those who are much more impacted by autism. We have our own special niches that we're really good at in the world, and we have things that we are not good at in the world. And this is something that I wanted to bring up specifically on that point, is that we are just as imperfect. Even though there are areas that we excel at, there are areas that you excel at. So I wanted to add that quickly. Yes?
So I appreciated your question and yours as well, as far as being able to match people such as yourself to a job, and how we as business owners can facilitate making that an easier transition. The other thing that I want to point out is that Chris does have a podcast that gives you more insight into his humor, which is fantastic. I would like for him to share that with all of you so that you can check this podcast out, because I think in relation to those two questions will help you to kind of understand where that falls in how you can help autistic folk to transition into your company. So.
Okay. I didn't expect that. So I started a little podcast on Spotify called Autism After Midnight. And given that humor is my initial coping mechanism, I went back and I watched a movie I hadn't watched in a long time called Patch Adams. Stars Robin Williams. And it's about a doctor in the 70s who also becomes a professional clown. And he begins to bring what his persona of the clown into the medical field. And doctors and medical professionals, they're uncomfortable with this. They don't like this. And he had a belief that humor was a very good medicine that was highly underutilized. And I really liked that point. So I decided that I would create a podcast where you could have 20 minutes of time to listen, and anything that was funny, no matter what it is, you laugh. Laughter, I think, has become very, very subjective in the world. We can laugh when we're sitting in front of our screen in our car or in our desk or something away from everyone else, but yet I keep finding a level of discomfort when people are around other people and something they find funny happens. And I would very much like that to go back to where if you're laughing, it should almost be involuntary. It's funny. But I also want people to think about, to go back and think about how were you as a person before you laughed and how are you after you laughed. So, there.
And that brings us to our last question. What can we as a Wichita community do for you?
Okay, so this is the launch gate. I don't have any proper marketing set up. I am petrified when it comes to new places and people, so that is something that I am constantly working on. I have not a lot of avenues of reaching out to other organizations and introducing myself. Again, this is a petrifying thing. It's something that I battle day in and day out. Also, if you want, or if you can, spread the word out. There is no company too small or too big that I won't work with. I still have to go over how I want to price this, how it will optimally work, but I want to do it based on the size of the staff and the size of the facility, because there are going to be more areas that you don't realize where you can plug people in. But the more companies, no matter the size, that I can get involved with, and I can come in, talk to, and consult on this, the more I can get companies to begin to create a change from their level out when it comes to changing the way people look at the talent